Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to ISCM's second virtual town hall series, Turkey chapter. The series of town hall of discussions with thought leaders and understanding supply chain during the pandemic period and post-pandemic period, we have moved across all regions. We started from India to Middle East, Egypt, and now in Turkey. This is the second part of the Turkey, and we have one more series which is going to come up next week on 28th, and do join us for that as well. The topic for today is reimagining the supply chain planning to build robust and agile supply chain networks of the future. Our thought leaders will soon join us to discuss that. I would like to thank TEDA for being our partner. As an institution, we are into academic research, training, and consulting, and we offer courses and certification globally in the domain of supply chain, demand planning, IBP, procurement, and we also have leadership customized program. We have recently launched a unique program, R4, which looks into reimagining the new supply chain in such uncertain period. Certain ground rules. This platform is on listen-only mode. And on the right-hand side of the control panel, there is a question bar where you can type in and send us your questions, which will be answered post-panel discussion. Let me go ahead and introduce you to our thought leaders. We have Cihangir, Supply Chain Director at Hisarlar, a Mahindra's company. We have Fatih, Supply Chain Director from Cengiz Makina. We have UMUT, Head of Group of Supply Chain from Engin. We have Necmettin, Supply Chain Director from Doğadan. We have Dr. Rakesh Singh, Chairman, Institute of Supply Chain Management, and Selen, Supply Chain Consultant at 10 Practice. I would request everybody to come up on the stage and request Selen to lead the discussion further. Thank you.
Hi, and thank you for the introduction. As you mentioned, this is a topic about supply chain and what we went through in Turkey, basically, during the COVID-19, and how our planning and end-to-end supply chain processes got affected. It's really important to say that the volatility and vulnerability of demand is affecting the supply chain processes altogether. So we can say that the supply chain is actually the servant of the demand. And today we will find out with our guests from different industries how they handle the structure and the processes during this crisis moment, and how they're handling and ongoing operations from now on. And we will find out their experiences throughout the process. So I would like to start with a question about the supply chain being disrupted during this pandemic crisis. And if we can name 5 things we have learned from the crisis, and how can we build and plan our future supply chains?
Hi, everyone. Yeah, it's UMUT. Let me introduce myself a bit, and then I'm going to jump up with the question, if you do not mind. It's UMUT SOYOİZLU. I have been in supply chain management system for about 20 years, including production, demand planning, third-party logistics, and so on. For the last 12 years, I'm in the 3PL contract logistics services, providing a service to the supply chain network within the country and also in the region. Currently, I have been working in a big distribution company, having exclusively distributor of the PNG products in Turkey as a head of supply chain. When we come up to the question, the first part of the question, if I'm not wrong, is how the whole supply network is affected in the pandemic period. It is, if all the supply network, that's for sure, has been affected badly. And also they are not cured yet. It is not cured today and tomorrow, by the way. Different markets, and anyhow, affected, different market in different sectors affected totally different, but the main idea of the destruction are alike, by the way. For example, inventory, availability, visibility, the partners problems, the labor force diminishing problems, etc. All this kind of stuff has been faced, the companies has faced with during this pandemic situation, pandemic period itself. Of course, it has affected the whole business, not just in our country, but also in all over the globe. Some of the sectors, for example, has totally stopped, like textile and so on. But on the other, in anyhow, in generically, this is my opinion, and my colleague is are going to contribute what I say already over here. In generically, we got several, let's say, get away from that the pandemic period itself, which the 5 of it, according to me. First of all, the e-commerce. We understand the importance of the e-commerce itself. The e-commerce business has been boosted during that pandemic period. And also, secondly, the good and proper IT infrastructure is very important. The importance of the IT structure has been obvious on that period as well, because majority of us try to continue our work by using internet and some of the application, and proper and constructed infrastructure led us to do our work in our homes. The other one, for example, good planning is another takeaway, because if we got a good plan on our table, then majority of us could manage this period properly. And in parallel with that, good and proper BCP plans, like business continuity plan. The importance of the BCP plans also is increased on that pandemic period itself. And also the partnership, the contractors, and the integration together with the contractors with the companies. Also, the importance of this integration also increased during this pandemic period. This is all generic, and my opinion. Of course, as I said before, my colleagues are going to contribute a lot of things on that. But I just come to the point in a different manner. Although whole the supply chain network has been disrupted in a negatively, but some of the opportunities that we have faced with also, for example, as I said before, e-commerce business has been boosted, exploded, you see. I joined my current company 2.5 months ago. When I joined the company, one of the main business that we serve in our country is an e-commerce business. We got a marketplace, a very good brand marketplace, and we send to B2C through that marketplace itself. And it's exploded. You see, we cannot manage the demand coming from the country itself. And this is not just the case for our company, but also in Turkey and in all of the global world itself. In Turkey, the total demand of the e-commerce is much more higher than the total capacity of the existing courier companies. Which this is another let's say phenomena, because the courier companies, logistic companies, are the main part of this e-commerce business itself. Therefore, all their network has been disrupted because of this huge demand coming from the last users. As I said before, these elements are important, but the courier companies' network is disrupted. The third-party companies, logistic companies, overall network structure is disrupted. Therefore, unfortunately, the lead time of the e-commerce business has been increased to 20 and even a month. You see, from 2 days or 3 days.
Yeah.
This is natural, let's say, result, by the way, this pandemic situation. And we try to, let's say, deal with that problem in our ongoing operation. Two things that we have applied just in order to make a quick solution on the e-commerce business. I'm not going in detail, but two critical things that we plan and manage properly. One is the e-commerce basis. The critical thing is the pre-packed, because the more the pre-packed, let's say, demand on your hand, the more the quick that you respond to the market, you see. And the pre-packing operation, especially in our part, has been increased, and we improve this process as much as possible. Of course, by adding a physical and adding an additional IT infrastructure. Therefore, we create a pre-packed product in advance, just in order to diminish the picking and packing activities, which is the most, let's say, break-even point of the e-commerce business itself. And we try to decrease the total lead time we have faced with by adding this solution. And the second one, this is very important. Together with our contractors, especially courier companies, we made a plan and we made a solution that all the courier companies had added, made an agreement with the people, you see, having a commercial license truck or car on their hands, and we made an agreement with them and made them some micro distribution by using themselves. This is very, let's say, useful solution. One day tomorrow, I know that this kind of solution is going to be improved, and one of the main product in the courier company's portfolio. But we initiated, and very happy to initiate this kind of solution, just in order to handle very critical micro distribution, especially within Istanbul. Of course, this enlarged to the other cities in our country, but we started first in Istanbul. And some of the critical region vicinities has been handled by using this kind of people, you see, in addition to courier companies' overall network itself. And currently, of course, as I said before, the destruction and the result of the destruction is not cured yet. Although everything seems to be come normal, but this destruction has been cured in a timely manner. But lead time, for example, when you look at the e-commerce, the total lead time is decreased to 5 to 6 days overall. By the way, it is improved day by day. But the critical difference today solution that we especially use for the e-commerce business is totally different than the past. This is the fact. This kind of small solutions, the integrated solutions, improved, let's say, technical and IT infrastructure is going to be one of our daily life after pandemic, by the way. Yeah, this is all the summary that I want to add. But if anything that I'm going to contribute during the conversation, then I will do so. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your answer. And basically what you're saying is actually emphasizing on the best quality of supply chain, being flexible and adaptable to certain situations. So this situation is not foreseen. Nobody would foresee that. So it's the what you have done, your plan has worked out because you acted quickly and flexibly, so you can adapt to the situation and handled all the logistics operations for one, and you thought outside of the box, and that's something really important for the CX and the customer experience. So basically what you have done is a very good plan and it worked out very well. So anybody else who wants to contribute on that, or should we talk about a little bit more about inventory during this such a supply chain disruption? What happens to the inventory and how we are existing and incoming inventory in such case?
Maybe I have to contribute first and step to the next question, your inventory question. UMUT covered almost everything. I just have one point to remark. As you know, from these quality management systems, there are some buzzwords like emergency plans or risk analysis. This pandemic has showed us that this is not just something redundant. It's useful. It's needed. We always have to consider working on our risk analysis and emergency plans all the time. Keep them alive. This is my point. Coming back to your inventory question, Selen, maybe can I skip to that question?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
So let me introduce myself briefly also as well. I have been working in the automotive industry for 20 years and worked for German and Chinese company. My current employer is a Chinese company. And on top of that, I have one more skill, I would say. I'm a surgical mask expert. Because I'm sure you are all one expert in surgical masks during this pandemic, because we all learned that without mask, you cannot produce. I mean, raw material is important, but if you cannot protect your employees, there is no production. There was a point that it was in March or April, I don't remember actually, that Turkey was importing masks from China so far, but there was a point that we exported to China the surgical masks. That was unexpected. So how could one company get prepared for such an unpredictable period? Of course, considering the inventory, you can build up plenty of mass inventory, but sky is the limit. No one can get prepared for such an unexpected crisis. So my key learning from this is none of these inventory models perfectly works for this pandemic. I don't expect at the moment any of these inventory logics to work in the future as well. Maybe we should find out something else. I don't know. But my key learnings from this period is that there are some competencies that we need as supply chain leaders, supply chain managers. The first one, as mentioned before, Selen and UMUT, it's flexibility, or maybe a new word, agility. Why? Because in such cases, you should be flexible enough to get to live with the new situation. So you should have alternative suppliers. You should have alternative resources. You should have suppliers who are close to you. We started to hear some words like reshoring or nearshoring. Before it was something like offshoring was good. If something is cheaper, go to China. If something is cheaper, go to Brazil. But now it's more important that price is not the only criteria for a continuous supply chain. So it is important to build your supply chain to be flexible enough in case of such crisis. Outsourcing, that was one of the popular things so far, but now you have to insource. It's important. It was so hard to convince your management, your shareholders, that outsourcing is better. There are better resources outside your company. It will be cheaper, more convenient. But now you have to insource. It's also just the opposite way that we have done so far. So as a result, flexibility is one of the competencies that we have to build and improve all the time. And the other one is, the second one is the visibility. Again, I really like extreme analytic solutions. I like this digitalization personally, but there is always a need for human people who has to run these such complex systems. And we have gone through a process that a period that none of the computers could predict and recommend something that could help us to go through this pandemic. So digitalization is important, but the most important thing is visibility. If you build something that makes your supply chain visible, it could be either complex or simple, it's much better, because at some point you have to understand what's going on. Normally, let's say, I'm giving an example from my company. We are making these production meetings once a week. It's the regular frequency, but we started to do it every day. To do this every day, our infrastructure, IT infrastructure, was not prepared, because you have to generate this data every day very quickly. And it was also a challenge for me to build our ERP system to provide quick data, daily data. So my final words about inventory is, there is no one inventory model that could help us in the future. What we need is to create flexible and visible supply chains, so that we can understand what's going on and how can we adapt to this new situation. One last word regarding inventory, just a recommendation to the attendants. We are talking about the past now. How did we cope with crisis? But I think there is one more thing which is more important. We should consider about how we are going to exit from Corona, because there will be one day that the demand will get back to normal, and we should be prepared for that.
Thank you. So basically, yes, we talked about the flexibility of supply chain and adaptability, and of course, we need to have certain operating procedures in place when we face a crisis like this. So it doesn't necessarily mean that supply chain only manages the flow of whatever we are selling, but it actually has to make sure that we as supply chain experienced people, we have operating procedures in place to use it when it's actually available at the time of crisis. So the flexibility comes from that. And visibility, yes, I agree with you. The visibility is really important. Whatever software you have, whatever ERP you have, a human touch is necessary at all times. So that visibility will give the idea of the current situation we're facing, and we can actually somehow maneuver it into the reality and manage our processes accordingly. So next topic, actually, with the other partners we work with, the stockists and the super stockists and the big distributors we work with in the region, especially in Turkey. And have we been fully able to integrate all the stakeholders to plan better during this crisis, or did we fail? Everybody was on board? What do you feel about that?
Hi, Selen. So if you want, I can start with that question. So hello, everyone. So let me introduce first of all myself. I'm Necmettin, working as a supply chain director at Doğadan tea company, which is a affiliate of Coca-Cola company in Turkey. So I have a 15 years experience in FMCG. So all is in supply chain, different areas, starting from the production to optimization, logistic warehousing, and some procurement areas. So maybe first of all I want to add a few things to UMUT and Fatih about what we learned about the supply this pandemic period. So I think the most thing as a world we learn is the resilience of the systems. It's not only related for the supply chain, but resilience of health system, resilience of our agriculture processes, agriculture system, or agriculture economy within our country, or our supply chain resilience, which is related for the e-commerce and other things. So what we see in that pandemic crisis in Turkey, as UMUT mentioned, e-commerce has a huge demand that many locations are locked down, but we also failed, as I see in some areas, especially for the logistic perspective for the e-commerce, that there are lots of delays on the logistic part. So what we learned, we need to improve our resiliency and to develop our systems according to that kind of issue. I am sure that no any company has a scenario planning about if a pandemic around the world happened as a global crisis. So we all have a scenario planning, like what if any fire happened in our facility, if we have a regional crisis anywhere else, but it's all geographically regional. And I'm not sure that in any companies think such kind of a big pandemic crisis in their scenario planning. So supply chain resilience will be much more important when I see after that period. So according to your question, maybe it will be good a little bit to tell about the working methodology of us for our distributors, how we manage this. So as a company, we have a large distributors, so super stock lists, let's say, according to the terminology. And we have some sub-distributors, which is managed at main distributors. So of course, the visibility of their inventory levels and the information is really important for us. Why? Because what we faced during that pandemic crisis, the demand, especially for the infusion herbal tea, is nearly double within the market from March to June. June. So that we also the demand shift some of the specialized categories. So you know, if you, and this really helps us, I mean, that to see that data in the sellout of the national key accounts also helps us to manage our distributor stocks. Because first we will see all the sellout data from the national key account customers, but we know that also the demand coming to the distributor also are similar character like this. And this is mainly totally different what we did before the crisis. And then what we had done, we starting to, you know, we had just established a sales system that we see the distributor stocks. So we follow all their inventory levels and also give directions to the sales team, of course, that which kind of products demand will be increased and what kind of which category they will increase their inventory. So this is important to manage, of course, our partners, of course, money, because they pay money to us for that stocks, and it's really important for us to reach that products which is fresh to our customers and to manage their inventory. So this is I try to explain like in a short way, let's say.
Thank you.
Can I jump in, Selen?
Yes. Yeah.
I'm Cihangir. My experience is in the agricultural tractors and machinery industry for the last 28 years. when you check the subject from the B2C point of view, other than e-commerce, this is very important with the face-to-face direct contact subject. Pandemic has shown us many different things. First, let's start with Necmettin Bey's topic. I don't believe, and I haven't seen none of our companies have this item in their risk management plans. This was a non-visible, what Fatih Bey said, visibility was important, but this is the thing which we have never considered in our risk management plans or contingency plans, because other than military coups or some terrorist clashes, actually Turkey has never seen lockdown measures. This was a very important thing, because in the agricultural industry, the unique way of the unique sales channel is customer to dealer direct contact. When there is a huge time gap for the lockdown during the high season, which is the spring of Turkey, just in the pandemic time, all of the sales have dropped. This was an interesting point which we have never covered. We have never foreseen in the past. This is the first case. So the most important thing which I can say as a learning from this pandemic is the companies should revise their risk management plans, including even direct, like a direct case. What happens if a COVID type virus comes to our business? Everybody should think about this. The second one is that although we have learned as a, how do you say, as a first theoretical basis of supply chain, we always learned about better sales planning, good sales planning, which we have started from dealers, then sales teams, to sales planning, to supply chain management, then to production. But the most important learning from this pandemic was this sales planning should be more resilient and should be more clear to everybody. And as Fatih Bey said, I believe it should be even more agile to change the frequency. Weekly or bi-weekly meetings are not meaning anything else like in these cases. So we have to be reviewing our plans day by day in order to be ready any kind of attacks like this. So sales planning was the first thing in supply chain theory, but we have experienced it with a high cost and pain in this pandemic period. And the last one, starting with the lockdown measures, everybody knows that in the B2C industry, like automotive and the others, sales have dropped immediately because it was not possible to make sales deals in the dealer network. So everything has stopped. But at this time, there were the orders in the pipeline to the suppliers. So coming back to this inventory question, two questions earlier, in order to manage the inventory levels, everybody should be more agile than it's advised or it's recommended earlier, because agility is the first case which can cover or which can protect the companies against high jumps in the inventory levels and keeping the company's financials in a better situation. So I have three learnings from this: better sales planning, agile network, which is possible to stop or ramp up the supplies, and the last one is the risk management. So these three learnings with a high cost and pain have contributed to our experiences much more than anything in the history.
Yeah, thank you. So basically, yes, we cannot foresee something like this, but we have to have our preparations and plans ready to be able to use it when necessary in cases like that. So basically what we talked about is all about the supply chain processes and how we've handled it, but supply chain is not a standalone position. It's right in the center of all the functions, yes, and we have drivers, internal customers, and other stakeholders in the company, and we ourselves just cannot manage the inventory ourselves. We have drivers like salespeople, like you mentioned. So in a crisis like this, how do we manage our relationships and integration with other stakeholders in the company, other functions who actually have been our teammates from the beginning? So what do you feel about that?
So maybe I can jump again that question. Yeah, as also Cihangir mentioned, so the planning, I mean that from end-to-end management is really important. I mean that within the company, I don't mean that only supply chain. So this crisis also shows us that strong SNOP process, sales and operation process, and sales and operation execution, the link between these are really important and critical for us. So as a company, how we manage this, maybe I will tell a little bit more about that. So we just redesigned the SNOP process within the company last year. So how our SNOP process is linked, we have a 3 main cycle in a monthly basis. So the first cycle is we set demand plan review, that we collect all the marketing activities, in and out products, new R&D formulation changes in one page, and we will build up our volumes according to that scenarios, which also feeding from the history. But what that pandemic shows us that, you know, there is a terminology talking for the demand sensing that will affect. It doesn't not only nowadays is not a only look at the historical data and make a statistical model and create a forecast. It's not like that. So we need to look at much more wider and to collect all the data from everywhere, because we said that today is a big data time. So, but important thing is how we analyze them. So this is still, I think, big question. Okay, we are talking that like a machine learning, artificial intelligence, this kind of things, but still as Turkey, I believe, I don't know, maybe it's much more developed softwares or things like in more developed countries, but in Turkey we have still opportunity there for that. And after this demand plan review, we have a second cycle in the second week of the month, which is we balance the demand and the unconstrained demand to turn it back to supply plans, which is we set constrained demand. So this is also critical to utilize our, of course, the machine park and also the plants and also our labors and also warehouses and the shipment capacities. And the last thing is, I think the most critical thing is all these data and analysis. Can we have a problem on the long term? Do we see any risk? And what is our risk mitigation? So do we need to open new campaign to the customers, or do we get additional more deduction, or do we need to find another way of to sell our products? So this is the SNOP cycle. Of course, this SNOP cycle is generally, it's especially I'm talking with the Turkish situation, many people think that this is the supply chain issue, SNOP process, but it's not only one department's responsibility. So it's the management of the finance and also the marketing, sales, and of course the operation teams. So it's very important to link all of that functions in one page and in one set of numbers, which eliminates all the inefficiencies within the company. And after, of course, this SNOP process is a every monthly process. But as I mentioned now, how we apply how we connect our supply chain resilience, how we develop our supply chain resilience. So what we did with it, what we are now working as a company, we are now working with a supply chain resilience model that has 6 main parts to understand our what is our score in supply chain resilience area. Of course, we have gaps, we know that, but we try to develop a roadmap to improve our supply chain resilience for that kind of processes, including technology, process, people, logistic, manufacturing, and also supplier side. So we of course now on the just in the middle of that study. So I'm sure that after that study we will maybe look much more localization, much more things, supply side especially, or to change our network sourcing model from not one country, from different countries. And also maybe we will think about not only one single mode logistic. Also, we need to think about much more different kind of alternatives, especially for the export products for that. So this is the main thing that I want to tell.
Thank you. So yeah, SNOP should be in place and everybody should be on board with whatever the company and actually the country is going through. Because as mentioned, I mean, supply chain cannot function all alone. We need other stakeholders in place, including IT, HR at times, and of course, sales and marketing and finance. So yeah, basically it requires a teamwork at all times, but especially in a crisis term like this, it definitely needs it. So we touched base a little bit about the technology and the softwares, the ERPs we are using. Do you think it was enough to cover something like this, or what did you experience during that time? How can we manage the real-time info and drops in demand and supply at the time?
So, can I take this question?
Yes, please.
As I said, I worked for a German company and working for a Chinese company right now. There are two different cultures. German culture is spending more time on planning, less time on execution. Now, working in a just in a opposite culture. We spend less time on planning, more on execution. Which one is better? It depends. But in any case, either you react quickly or plan in a long time. The most important thing is the data. If you haven't installed something like an integrated system or ERP, you will get hardly through this or through such crisis. I mean, how can I give an example? I just don't want to repeat my example, but as it is a good example, let me repeat it. We had to do this weekly meetings, but during this crisis, we had to do it daily. Without ERP, without our system, I wouldn't be able to adapt to this new situation. So there is a quote usually attributed to management guru Peter Drucker. What gets measured gets managed. So if you have the data in your hand, either the system is intelligent or not, you will at least have 50% of the tools to find your way. This is my key finding. Always build your data and keep it accessible to everyone, whoever needs it.
Thank you. So yeah, basically technology itself is not enough. So especially in terms like this, we need to definitely intervene with the system and manage it with the ongoing operating plans.
Yeah,
so
and
we talked about
want to add one thing to Fatih Bey. So we have opportunities on to get the real-time data, and also important that to analyze that data. So this is the main thing, I think, that will be much more investment in Turkey on that area in maybe next 2-3 years. And we will hear that real-time data too much in everywhere, I think.
We talk. Yes, Dr. Singh.
Good evening, everybody. Good to listen to all of you. And I was just looking at some Turkey data through ENY, and I found that if you look at the COVID-19 disrupted business in a way, you find that the major resulting range of operational challenges in supply chain were material shortages, which was the biggest challenge in the first phase of the pandemic. This thing, drop in demand, then worker shortages, cash flow issues, and planning issues. So when you ask about 5 key challenges during pandemic, I'm just mixing the 4 or 5 questions that you've asked wherever I can chip in. And material shortages, drop in demand, worker shortages, cash flows issues, and planning issues. And I think as this particular thing is on the planning, you asked a very good question about super stockists, the whole channel distribution. And I think worldwide, in most countries, you find that these channels are the real problem in the whole supply chain. All of us are very familiar with what is called as a traditional bullwhip, where channel partners whip the orders in each levels, and then they make demand look like 2x, 3x, and they create huge inventory in the process. I think this pandemic, we were really lucky. Because of this, there's something available in the pipeline, and hence we went ahead with very, we planned well. And when we say we planned well, I think what we did was very interesting. As the factory closed, as the demand shifted, as the worker were not available, and I'm also using the global experiences to make a very holistic point here. I think we went into a daily war room meeting for quick decision making. And, this was the first fundamental challenge. That is, Necmettin is saying about his SNOP, but I think this was a very different kind of SNOP where you met every day like a war room meeting and decided on where to, supply things. Because what has happened in the whole pandemic, as someone rightly said in building, is that we were too busy with qualification of additional supply sources that became, as material shortages became a very strong challenge, and then qualification of additional distribution logistics. And now why I say that additional distribution logistics is because the incidence and the time and the length of the pandemic was changing in most countries in a very different way. And we were catering to the areas which were dominated, quarantined areas, areas which were locked down more than the other areas. Demand was shifting from one place to another, and then the consumer behavior also shifted. If you see the 5 elements of the consumer behavior, I would think, as someone rightly said, there is a change in category consumption during this period. There is a shift in shopping trip. There is a private levels being more important than the brand that became. And I think there are a lot of other reasons that you can actually see in the change in the consumer behavior. Now, how did we really react? And this is very important. There's a great learning from the pandemic for planning professionals. We went into our war rooms, we identified where to go. So we said what resources we need, supply resources we need. It was very different than the earlier. And we also needed to look at different markets. 2, we said, okay, transportation. So what transportation is available for me to fulfill demand? Now demand went local, so I needed to look at the distribution planning very differently, not from my mother warehouses, but in the localities where there were extra capacity available in terms of warehouses. So I needed to secure my transport, I needed to secure my warehouses, I needed to secure my supply, and I needed to secure those commodities which were in demand. So I needed to focus on production of those commodities which were in demand during this period of time, if you look at essential commodities. And the planning went something like this. So I think, pandemic taught us 2 things: that we need to really have a SNOP on a daily basis, not weekly or monthly basis. And
Yes.
we need to really understand that planning is not the main event. Planning is a coordinating function, and we need to have a material in place. We need to have a demand understanding in place, because there are few challenges. In fact, I see a little interest in data, and I think there are a lot of debate that people have been saying that those companies which use technology integration have been able to do better in the pandemic. Yes, but technology integration alone will not help unless you know what data you want. And as Necmettin said, in SNOP, we need a data. Largely, if you see, we all talk about a lot of data, but globe-wise, I teach in Athens University of Business and Economics in Athens. And we did some work there, and we found that everybody uses sales order and everybody has a use forecasting system. And then nobody knows how to use those forecasting systems. You sense demand. I think sensing demand is a very, very, very debatable issue. You see DDMRP, you see SNOP, you see IBP, and I think there's a great debate about what should be the sense demand that should go into the process to plan better. And I think there is a debate whether you need sales order, whether you need to sense only through the orders, and you need to decouple your inventory in such a way that you don't have a cumulative inventory and long-term inventory. You increase the inventory turns in a much better way, reduce and decouple lead time. So these are issues that are coming up. But pandemic has said that all this needed a very close war type of footing where all functional areas, as Mr. Basol said, needs to think and create a situation to respond to emerging uncertainty. So I think that's my first take on that.
Yes, and that was a great wrap up. Thank you.
Welcome.
So,
Selen, can I make a small contribution to Rakesh Bey?
Please go ahead.
As an example, Rakesh Bey, the ordinary system, transportation system in Turkey are the 15 tons and 24 tons very familiar large trucks in Turkey. Very rapidly, all of the transportation companies introduced their faster and smaller solutions. By May, as far as I remember, the advertisements started to be released for smaller vans, commercial vans up to 2-3 tons, and even 1 ton, like commercial vehicles, in which Turkey is very capable of producing with 400,000-500,000 units per year. So transportation companies immediately introduced their faster but small volume solutions in this period. So you have taken a very important side, the transportation of it. So in the future, we have to think of our cumulated transportation solutions like trains, trucks, etc. But there should also be some even hand carry solutions in the future for such critical positions. In case we are not able to take up all the material, there should definitely be smaller or faster solutions. This was very important. And the second one, Necmettin Bey introduced, you have emphasized, I very, very strongly believe in the sense of or feeling of sales. Other than ordinary sales figures, sales plans, there should be a strong data flowing from the dealer base through our sales management teams to the heart of supply chain organization. We have to have, other than consolidated, finalized net figures, we should also have our plan B, plan C based on the sense of sales. This is very important. Other than this, if we stick on our ordinary plans coming from our SNOP meetings, we cannot be ready again for such a crisis. But as you rightly said, sense of feeling in these cases, sense of sales, feeling of sales will be very important in the future. This can be a second stage, third stage risk management plan in the future. We have to be ready with these as well, other than finalized and strict data.
Yeah, I agree with you. We definitely need the translation of what's going on in the marketplace. So that's going to be taken down by salespeople and the distributors we have. So we need to cooperate more, integrate our functions so we can understand what's really going on out there, other than what we have on the system. Any additional comments on this? Can I skip to the next one? Okay, we talked about inventory, but let's talk about a little bit about the procurement. What happened to our chain coming in, all the procurement we have from out of exotic areas, for example? Do we have any imports from other countries? And what happened during this pandemic? What happened to our supply? Did we face any failures? Did we have to skip to other regions, or did we get a chance to turn this around into an advantage and maybe localize it a little bit?
It was, let me take in, it was one of the most critical areas which was out of control at the early stages of pandemic. For example, Italy is the third level foreign trade partner of Turkey after Germany and France. So, you know, the pandemic was felt very heavily and as heaviest by Spain and Italy during the early stages from March to mid-May. So I remember what happened in Italy, and it was exactly as a defined as a disaster, because as soon as the people are locked down at their homes, the life has stopped in Italy, and even at the end of May or early June, the customs offices were not working properly. So everything has stopped, life has stopped from the foreign trade point of view in Italy. So that means another learning from this, especially the foreign trade should have their optimum alternatives in-house. As Fatih Bey said, outsourcing, insourcing, a similar plan can be applied or should be applied here. Considering the quality versus price conditions, all foreign suppliers should have their alternative plans in the local. From time to time, even with the cost or quality risks, calculated risks, all of our foreign suppliers shown us there should be their local alternatives, because in Turkey you can create your in-house, in your country, you can create your own measures. But when the subject comes to the cancellation of all customs operations, all flight cancellations in between the multinational environment, you are dead, you are stuck. So as I said, after 2.5 months of lockdown in the Italian customs, all Turkish producers supplying from Italian base has come to a very, very strong crisis. So Italy was only an example. If you have similar supplies from similar risky countries, it will be another challenge for all of us in the coming second wave. You know, the figures are increasing. Some of the countries, Australia and New Zealand, are repeating their measures in order to avoid any second wave. So in case of a second wave possibility, we should be ready with our localization plans, or at least local alternatives, because I don't mean because of quality and price issues all companies should run into a local base. No, nobody can say this, but we should be ready with our plans in case of very simple question. What happens if all the borders are closed? Are we dead? Aren't we producing? Are we stopping? No. Show must go on. So we should always have our local solutions for international supplies. This is the most important learning from this case.
Yes, I totally agree with you. I mean, yes, we are import-bound country, but yes, we have to have local solutions, local alternatives for certain supplies, definitely, and we should actually...
At least for temporary supplies, let's say.
Yeah, we have to...
All right, I would like to come in once, Selen, here again. And I think Cihangir has really touched a very critical areas of new thinking in new normal in the next period. But there are certain things that we really need to know. We can do some local supplies in quick succession in certain areas. There is a lot of stuck in few countries of the world which are single source. So there's a learning also from that single source. I'm not saying don't go local. I think a lot of things should go local, which can be easily made, you know. And not only local, as Mr. Fatih said, it should be diverse based. There should be something which we look at sourcing not from Italy, then from some other countries or from some other countries. This is what it is. But you know, when you look at the situation in which the world suppliers of procurement community is just you know, caught up, China. Now look at China. I'm saying China because 70% of the world import is from China. If you see today, and 70% of the corona rate is also throughout the world. And I think they both map so well. I think we need to do one thing. Single source country is a very challenge because even the option may be available only in China. So you don't have it because it's not diverse supply base. How do we look at it? And I think someone rightly said that we need to look at our planning bill, we look at our bill of material. And we start looking at our bill of material, you find that there's certain bill of material, they have their own bill of material, they have their own bill of material. Now this bill of material you know, flow chart is also reflected in the suppliers tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, tier 5, tier 6 suppliers. In fact, during the tsunami in 2013 in Japan, Intel got struck. They were monitoring tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 as a map. They're mapping their geography, mapping their capability, mapping their holdings. And they found that there was somebody in the tier 14. We did not have the material which goes into making chips, and that was a 3 months lead time before they could come back and their business continue. Understanding and mapping supplier is very important, whether you go local, whether you go diverse, whether you go this thing, because you need to know how your supplier is going to go. In fact, my supplier may be in UK and US, not in China. And I think the second phase, I faced the same problem. I didn't have any understanding of the tier 1, tier 2 suppliers. There is a need for using the supply chain tools, and also procurement needs to come in a big way in the IBP or SNOP Nesmanit, because that's very important. And understanding the risk involved in the inbound supply chain as also in the outbound supply chain. In outbound supply chain, all of you know that stockists, super stockists create a black box. Whether you have a ERP or not, that's another solution that you need to really bring in. But there's a black box here, you don't know anything. There are a lot of companies like Resilink and Lamasoft which are trying to build a geography out of the suppliers, catchment areas and their ecosystem. I think we need to really understand where the problem lies geographically, what is the extent of problem, so that we can start moving and securing our supply bases either locally or from alternative sources, because there are some alternative sources. As world is reswearing in a way, there are some alternative sources that have come about. So that's from my side for this.
Yeah, totally. So yes, not all eggs in one basket. That's what we say. So we have to create alternatives, secure ones and efficient and effective ones at least. And we should choose one on the other when times are like this. So yeah, we need to have alternatives basically. I think it's time to wrap up, Dr. Singh. Do you want to wrap up, or did we already do that? What do you think? Do we have any questions coming in? I don't know.
I thank everybody, all the panelists, Cihangir, Fatih, Selen, Necmettin, UMUT, and Dr. Singh. Thank you all for being there. Indeed, wonderful insights and a good takeaway for the audience today. And I would also like to thank all the attendees for being there, for being a part in attending, and do continue attending for the next series, which is on 20th of this month. I would like to thank Shanmukh, Yvonne, and the entire ISCM team for making it happen. And do visit us on our social pages and like our videos. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.